I am 28 years old. My sister Chloe is 30. For my entire life, she has been the golden child. She was the one who got the best grades. She was the one who was captain of the cheerleading squad. She was the one our parents always praised. I was just the quiet one who followed behind her. I did not mind it too much. I loved my sister. I thought she loved me too. But I was wrong. The day I found out how wrong I was started like any other Sunday. We were at our parents' house for our weekly family dinner. The air smelled like roast chicken and my mother's perfume. My husband, Mark, and I arrived a little late. Chloe and her husband, Ben, were already there. They were sitting on the couch with my parents and my grandmother, Eleanor. Everyone was smiling. It was a kind of smile I had not seen on their faces before. It was big and bright and a little bit fake. I felt a small knot of worry in my stomach. I did not know why. "There you are," my mother said. She stood up to hug me, but her eyes kept darting back to Chloe. "Sorry we are late," I said. "Traffic was terrible." "It does not matter," Chloe said, her voice filled with a strange, sweet happiness. "Nothing can ruin today." She stood up. Ben stood up with her, his arm around her waist. They looked like a perfect couple from a magazine. Chloe was wearing a soft yellow dress that made her glow. She placed a hand on her stomach. I knew what was coming before she even said the words. My heart did a little flip. It was a mix of happiness for her and a familiar pang of sadness for myself. "We have some news," Chloe announced. Her smile was so wide it looked like it hurt her face. "Ben and I are going to have a baby." The room exploded. My mother gasped and started crying happy tears. My father hugged Ben so hard he lifted him off the ground. My grandmother, Eleanor, clapped her hands together. Her eyes were shining. She had been waiting for this moment for a long time. She always talked about her legacy. She wanted to see her family continue. "Oh, my dear girl," Eleanor said, pulling Chloe into a hug. "This is the most wonderful news I have ever heard. A great-grandchild. Finally." I watched them all. I felt like I was watching a play from the back row. I was happy for her. I really was. But there was a part of me that felt a little bit empty. Mark and I had been trying for a year. Nothing had happened. We did not tell anyone. We did not want the pressure. But now the pressure was here anyway. It was standing right in front of me, wearing a yellow dress and a perfect smile. Mark squeezed my hand. He knew what I was thinking. He always did. I forced a smile onto my face and walked over to my sister. "Congratulations, Chloe," I said. "I am so happy for you." "Thank you, Sarah," she said. She hugged me, but it felt stiff. When she pulled away, she looked at me with something that looked like pity. "Do not worry. Your time will come. Maybe." Her words were like little needles. I knew she did not mean to be cruel. Or maybe she did. With Chloe, it was always hard to tell. She had a way of saying things that sounded nice but felt sharp. Dinner was all about the baby. What would they name it? Would it be a boy or a girl? When was the due date? Chloe answered every question with perfect, practiced ease. She was glowing. She was the center of attention. She was exactly where she always wanted to be. My grandmother could not stop talking about the trust fund. It was a special fund she had set up for her first great-grandchild. It was a lot of money, enough to set someone up for life. I had forgotten about it until now. Suddenly, the big smiles and the perfect announcement felt a little different. It felt calculated. "This baby will want for nothing," Eleanor declared, raising her wine glass. "To my first great-grandchild." Everyone cheered. I took a sip of water. The knot in my stomach was tighter now. I looked at Chloe. She caught my eye and gave me a small, knowing smirk. It was a look I had seen 1,000 times before. It was the look she gave me right before she won a game or got something I wanted. It was the look of victory. I tried to ignore it. I tried to be the good sister, the supportive sister. I asked all the right questions. I smiled in all the right places. But I felt a growing sense of unease. Something felt wrong. I could not put my finger on it. It was just a feeling, a cold, heavy feeling in the pit of my stomach. After dinner, we all moved back to the living room for dessert. My mother brought out a huge chocolate cake. On top, in pink and blue frosting, it said, "Congratulations, Chloe and Ben." She must have known before today. They must have planned this whole thing, this perfect family moment. I felt like an outsider. Chloe was sitting in the big armchair, the one my grandfather used to sit in. She was holding court. Everyone was gathered around her. She was talking about morning sickness and doctor's appointments. She was loving every second of it. "The doctor says everything is perfect," she said, beaming. "Absolutely perfect." Ben was standing behind her, rubbing her shoulders. He looked proud. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery. In a way, he had. Marrying my sister was like marrying into royalty in our small town. And now he was the father of the golden grandchild. I needed some air. I stood up and walked toward the kitchen. "Where are you going, dear?" my mother asked. "Just getting some water," I said. As I walked past Chloe's chair, she shifted to get more comfortable. Her purse, which was balanced on the arm of the chair, tipped over. It fell onto the floor with a soft thud. Everything spilled out. A lipstick rolled under the coffee table. Her keys skidded across the hardwood floor. A wallet, a compact mirror, and a few folded papers scattered around her feet. "Oh, clumsy me," she said with a little laugh. Everyone rushed to help her. Ben knelt down to gather her things. My mother started picking up the makeup. I bent down too, wanting to be helpful. I saw a white envelope peeking out from under the chair. I reached for it. I picked it up. It was a letter from a doctor's office. That was not surprising. She had just been talking about her doctor. But then I looked closer. The name on the envelope was not Chloe's. It was mine, Sarah Thompson. My name. My blood ran cold. I stared at it. Why did Chloe have a letter addressed to me from a doctor? I did not recognize the name of the clinic. It was a place I had never been to. It was called the Center for Reproductive Health, a fertility clinic. My heart started pounding in my chest. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. The sounds of the room faded away. All I could see was my name on that envelope in my sister's purse. Chloe looked at me. Her smile faltered for a second. She saw what I was holding. Her eyes widened in panic. She quickly masked it with a bright, dismissive wave of her hand. "Oh, that's just some old thing," she said, reaching for it. "Give it here." But I did not give it to her. I held it tight. My hand was shaking. I stood up slowly. Everyone was looking at me now. They saw the letter in my hand. They saw the look on my face. "Sarah, what is it?" Mark asked. He came to my side. "This is addressed to me," I said. My voice was quiet. It was barely a whisper. "Why do you have a letter addressed to me, Chloe?" Chloe's face went pale. Ben stood up and put a protective arm around her. "It must be a mistake," Ben said smoothly. "A mix-up at the post office. You know how it is." "The letter is from a fertility clinic," I said, my voice getting stronger. "I have never been to a fertility clinic." The room was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. My mother looked confused. My father looked angry. My grandmother looked intrigued. Chloe just stared at me. Her eyes were hard and cold. The loving, happy sister from a few minutes ago was gone. In her place was a stranger who had a letter about my fertility in her purse. "We are so happy," she had said. Her words echoed in my mind. But as I looked at her now, I knew it was all a lie. Her happiness was built on something ugly, something that had to do with me. And I was going to find out what it was. I held the letter tightly. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. I looked at my sister, searching her face for an explanation. All I found was a mask of nervous irritation. "Sarah, you are making a scene," she said, her voice sharp and low. Give me the letter. It is probably just junk mail. It is not junk mail, I said, my own voice trembling slightly. It is from a medical clinic, and it has my name on it. My husband, Mark, put his hand on my arm. Let me see, he said gently. I gave him the envelope. He turned it over in his hands. He read the name of the clinic aloud. Center for Reproductive Health. His eyes met mine. He looked just as confused as I felt. We have never been here, he stated, looking at Chloe. Of course you have not. Ben chimed in, stepping forward. He tried to sound reasonable, but his voice was tight. It is obviously a mistake. They must have mixed up the names. Sarah and Chloe sound similar if you say them fast. No, they do not, I said flatly. The excuse was so flimsy it was insulting. My mother wrung her hands. Children, please, she said. Let us not fight. Chloe has wonderful news. We should be celebrating. She was trying to smooth things over, just like she always did. She hated conflict, especially when it involved Chloe. I want to know why my sister has a letter for me from a fertility clinic, I insisted, my voice rising. A clinic I have never heard of. Chloe let out a frustrated sigh. She crossed her arms over her chest, not her stomach. It was a small detail, but I noticed it. She was protecting herself, not the baby. Fine, she snapped. I was going to tell you. I was looking into options for you, Sarah. I know you and Mark have been trying. I was just trying to help. The lie was so quick, so smooth. It was almost believable. For a second, I almost wanted to believe it. It would be so much easier than the alternative. You were helping? I asked. By getting my mail? By going to a clinic on my behalf? That does not make any sense. I made an inquiry for you, she said, her voice dripping with false concern. I was going to give it to you later, in private. I did not want to embarrass you. Embarrass me. The words stung. She was turning this around on me, making me seem ungrateful, making me seem like the one with the problem. Chloe, that is so thoughtful, my mother gushed, relief washing over her face. See, Sarah? She was just trying to be a good sister. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father, who was nodding in agreement. They were so quick to believe her. They always were. But I knew my sister. I knew that look in her eye. It was the same look she had when she convinced our parents to let her get a car first, even though I was older and had been saving for one. It was the look of someone who knew how to manipulate every situation to her advantage. I do not believe you, I said, my voice cold and clear. Chloe gasped, feigning shock. How can you say that, after everything I do for you? What is in the letter? Mark asked, cutting through the drama. He was always direct. He handed the envelope back to me. Open it, Sarah. My hands shook as I tore open the seal. I pulled out the single sheet of paper inside. My eyes scanned the words. It was a confirmation of a recent consultation. It listed a series of tests that had been performed. It mentioned concerning results and the need for a follow-up appointment to discuss viability issues. The words did not make sense. Tests I never took. Results about my body that I did not know. A consultation I never had. I read a sentence aloud. Following your recent tests, we need to schedule a follow-up to discuss the results regarding your low ovarian reserve. The room went completely silent. I felt the color drain from my face. Low ovarian reserve. The words hung in the air, heavy and cruel. Was it true? Could it be true? See? Chloe said softly, her voice full of fake sympathy. This is why I did not want to give it to you here. I am so sorry, Sarah. She was apologizing. But she was not sorry for the letter. She was sorry I had found out. She was putting on a performance for our family. The caring sister, burdened with terrible news about her barren sibling. You did this. I whispered, looking at her. You went to this clinic. You pretended to be me. Do not be ridiculous, Ben said loudly. Why would she do that? Yes, Sarah, why would I do that? Chloe asked, her eyes wide and innocent. I have my own baby to think about now. I do not have time for games. But it was a game. I knew it was. This was her checkmate. She had just announced her pregnancy, securing her place as the first to give our grandmother a great-grandchild. And now, she was revealing my supposed infertility. She was not just winning. She was making sure I could never even compete. My grandmother, Eleanor, who had been watching silently until now, spoke up. Her voice was frail but sharp. Is this true, Sarah? Are you having trouble? I could not answer. I did not know what was true anymore. All I knew was that my sister was at the center of a terrible, confusing lie. She has been trying for a year, Chloe offered, her voice a stage whisper to my grandmother. She told me in confidence. I had never told her that. I had told my best friend Maya. I had not told my sister. Another lie. Small, but it was part of a bigger, uglier picture. I need to go, I said, my voice choked. I could not breathe in that room anymore. It was filled with my sister's lies and my family's willing blindness. I turned and walked toward the door. Mark was right behind me. Sarah, wait, my mother called out. I did not stop. I walked out of the house and into the cool evening air. I did not look back. I got into the car and slammed the door. Mark got in on his side. He did not say anything. He just started the engine and drove away. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked back at the house. I could see them all through the big front window. My family. They were gathered around Chloe again. They were comforting her. My mother was hugging her. My father had his hand on her shoulder. They were comforting the liar. And I was the one out here, alone in the dark, with a letter full of devastating words that might not even be true. The drive home was silent. The city lights blurred past my window. I held the letter in my lap. The paper was crumpled from how tightly I had been holding it. I kept reading the words over and over. Low ovarian reserve. Viability issues. It felt like a verdict, a judgment on my body. But it was a judgment delivered by my sister. When we got back to our apartment, I walked straight to the couch and sat down. Mark came and sat next to me. He put his arm around me. I do not understand, I said, my voice finally breaking. Why would she do this? How could she do this? I do not know, Mark said. His voice was grim, but we are going to find out. He took the letter from my hands and read it again, carefully this time. This clinic, he said. It is a real place, a very expensive, very exclusive place. I have never been there, I repeated. It was the only thing I was sure of. She must have impersonated you, he said. She would have needed your personal information, your date of birth, your social security number. A cold dread washed over me. She knows all of that. We are sisters. Our parents have files with all our old documents at their house. She could have gotten it easily. But why? Mark asked, shaking his head. What could she possibly gain from this? The trust fund, I said quietly. Grandmother Eleanor's trust for the first great-grandchild. Mark looked at me, his eyes widening as he understood. She announces her pregnancy, and on the same day she arranges for you to find out you are supposedly infertile. She is not just trying to be first. She is trying to be the only one. It was monstrous. It was a level of cruelty I could not comprehend. To play with my health, my hopes, my future, all for money. But is it true? I whispered. The letter, the results. Could it be true? We do not know that, Mark said firmly. This is a piece of paper. It is not a diagnosis, not a real one. The first thing we need to do is find out for sure. He was right. I needed to separate the facts from Chloe's lies. I needed to know the truth about my own body. I will call my doctor tomorrow, I said, my voice stronger now. Resolve was starting to push through the shock and the pain. I will get a real test, from a real doctor who is actually treating me. Good, Mark said. And in the meantime, we need to think about Chloe. What is there to think about? I said, my voice bitter. She is a monster. Yes, he agreed. But she is a clever monster. She has our whole family convinced she was just trying to help you. She made you look like the crazy, ungrateful one for getting upset. He was right. In that room, I was the one who made a scene. I was the one who stormed out. Chloe was the pregnant, caring sister who had been unfairly attacked. She had already spun the narrative. So what do we do? I asked. I felt lost. I felt like I was in a nightmare I could not wake up from. We play her game, Mark said, his voice hard. But we play it better. We do not confront her. We do not accuse her. We gather proof. We find out exactly what she did and why. And then, when we have everything, we expose her. A plan. I needed a plan. It was better than sitting here, drowning in my own misery. How do we get proof? I asked. We start with the clinic, he said. You should call them. Pretend you are confirming the follow-up appointment they mentioned in the letter. See what they say. See how much information you can get. It was a good idea. A scary idea. I would have to pretend to be the person Chloe pretended to be. I would have to step into her lie to uncover the truth. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. Okay, I will call them tomorrow. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Chloe's smiling face as she announced her pregnancy. I thought about the pity in her eyes when she looked at me. I thought about her hand on her stomach. Was any of it real? Was she even really pregnant? The thought was so wild, so outlandish that I pushed it away. But it lingered in the back of my mind. A tiny seed of doubt. The next morning, I felt exhausted but determined. I found the number for the clinic on the letterhead. I sat at my kitchen table, the phone in my hand. Mark stood beside me, giving me a reassuring nod. My heart was pounding as I dialed the number. A calm, professional voice answered. Center for Reproductive Health. How may I help you? I took a shaky breath. Hello, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I am calling to confirm an appointment. My name is Sarah Thompson. There was a sound of typing on a keyboard. Yes, Miss Thompson. I have you down for a follow-up consultation with Dr. Evans this Friday at 10 in the morning. It was real. The appointment was real. Chloe had made it. That is great, I said, my voice sounding fake to my own ears. I just had a quick question about the letter I received. It mentioned my test results. Yes, the receptionist said. Dr. Evans will go over those with you in detail at your appointment. I know, I said, trying to sound casual. I was just a bit confused about which tests were performed. I was a little overwhelmed that day. Could you just remind me what was done? There was a pause. I can see here we did a full hormone panel and an antral follicle count, she said. Standard procedure for an initial workup. I had no idea what any of that meant, but I knew I had never had those tests done. Right, of course, I said. And the payment. Did my insurance cover it? Another pause. More typing. It says here the consultation and all tests were paid for out of pocket, she said. Paid in full on the day of the visit. Paid in full. These clinics were incredibly expensive. A consultation and a full panel of tests would cost thousands of dollars. Where did Chloe get that kind of money? Ben was a high school teacher. Chloe worked part-time at a boutique. They did not have that kind of disposable income. Okay, I said, my mind racing. Thank you. That is all I needed to know. I hung up the phone. I looked at Mark. She paid for it herself, I said. Thousands of dollars, just to get information on me. This is more than just about the trust fund, Mark said, his face serious. This is an obsession. It is sick. He was right. This was not just about money. This was about control. This was about a deep, twisted jealousy that had been festering for years. Chloe did not just want to win. She wanted me to lose. The phone call had given me a piece of the puzzle, but it also gave me more questions. The biggest one was about the money. How did she afford it? I thought back to dinner. My grandmother. Eleanor was wealthy. Very wealthy. She adored Chloe. She had always been generous with her. Had Chloe asked her for the money? Had she lied to our grandmother to get it? I decided to call my best friend, Maya. I needed to talk to someone who was not part of my family. Someone who would see things clearly. I told her everything. The announcement, the purse, the letter, the phone call to the clinic. She listened patiently without interrupting. When I was finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Maya, are you there? I asked. I am here, she said. Her voice was cold with anger. I am just processing the fact that your sister is a literal supervillain. I let out a small, watery laugh. That is one way to put it. Sarah, this is insane, she said. She impersonated you at a medical facility. That is a crime. Like a real go-to-jail crime. I had not even thought of that. I do not want her to go to jail, I said. I just want to know why she did this, and I want to expose her. Okay, Maya said, her voice shifting into practical mode. Okay, so what is the next step? You have an appointment with your real doctor, right? Yes, on Wednesday, I said. Good. That is the first priority. We need a baseline of truth, she said. In the meantime, we need to dig into Chloe. You said the clinic was expensive. You need to follow the money. I was thinking the same thing, I said. I think she might have gotten it from our grandmother. That makes sense, Maya said. Eleanor has always had a blind spot for Chloe, but how do you prove it without tipping anyone off? We brainstormed for a while. We could not just ask Eleanor. She would go straight to Chloe. We could not ask my parents. They would accuse me of being jealous and paranoid. What about Ben? Maya asked. Do you think he knows the extent of this? He was right there, I said. He defended her. He is in on it. Probably, she agreed. But he might be the weak link. He always seemed a little overwhelmed by your family. I thought about Ben. He was a quiet man. He loved Chloe, that was clear. But he often looked uncomfortable during our loud, dramatic family dinners. Maybe he was just going along with Chloe's plan. Maybe he had doubts. I do not know if I could talk to him, I said. I do not trust him. You do not have to talk to him directly, Maya said. You just have to observe him. Look for cracks. People who are lying are always nervous. It was a good point. I decided to pay more attention to Ben the next time I saw him. The next few days were agonizing. I was a wreck waiting for my doctor's appointment. Every little twinge in my body made me panic. What if the letter was true? What if Chloe's evil plan was based on a terrible reality? Mark was my rock. He kept me calm. He made me dinner. He held me when I cried. He reminded me that we were a team. We would face this together, no matter what the results were. Finally, Wednesday arrived. I sat in the waiting room of my doctor's office, my leg bouncing nervously. Mark held my hand. When the doctor called my name, I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. I was finally going to get some real answers. I explained the situation to my doctor. I did not mention my sister. I just said I had received some confusing medical information, and I wanted to get properly tested. She was understanding and professional. She drew my blood for the hormone panel. She scheduled an ultrasound for the following week to do the follicle count. The blood test results should be back in a day or two, she said. I will call you as soon as I have them. Leaving the office, I felt a small sense of relief. I had taken a step. I was taking back control of my own health, my own story. The next day, the phone rang. It was the doctor. My heart leaped into my throat. Mark rushed to my side as I answered it. "Sarah," my doctor said, her voice calm and even. "I have your test results here." I held my breath. "Everything is perfectly normal," she said. "Your hormone levels are exactly where they should be for a healthy woman your age. There is absolutely no indication of low ovarian reserve." The relief was so immense, it felt like a physical weight had been lifted off my chest. I started to cry, but this time they were tears of joy. "Thank you," I sobbed into the phone. "Thank you so much." After I hung up, I turned to Mark and threw my arms around him. "It was a lie," I said, laughing and crying at the same time. "It was all a lie." He held me tight. "I knew it," he said. "I knew you were fine." The good news was a powerful antidote to the poison Chloe had tried to inject into my life. The fear was gone, and in its place, a cold, hard anger began to grow. My sister had not just lied. She had fabricated a medical condition. She had tried to convince me, and our entire family, that I was broken, that I was incapable of having children. She had done it out of pure malice and greed. "Now what?" Mark asked, his voice low. "Now we prove it," I said. My voice was steady. The sadness was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. "We have to find out how she did it. We need concrete proof that she was the one who went to that clinic." "The clinic has security cameras," Mark suggested. "In the waiting room. They must have footage of her." "How would we get that?" I asked. "We might need a lawyer," he said. "Or a private investigator." A private investigator. It sounded so dramatic, like something out of a movie. But this was my life, and it had become a drama. "Let's do it," I said without hesitation. "I do not care what it costs. I want to see the look on her face when she realizes we know everything." The next step was to find a reputable private investigator. Mark spent the evening researching online. He found a firm with excellent reviews. They specialized in domestic cases. I called them the next morning and set up a consultation. Walking into the PI's office felt surreal. It was in a nondescript building downtown. The office itself was sparse and professional. The investigator, a man named Mr. Grant, was calm and methodical. He listened to my story without judgment. He took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he looked at me with serious eyes. "This is a case of identity theft for the purpose of medical fraud," he said. "It is very serious." "I know," I said. "What I need is undeniable proof that it was my sister who went to the clinic, not me." "That should be straightforward," he said. "We can subpoena the security footage from the clinic. We can also look into the payment. You said it was paid out of pocket. We can trace that transaction. Find out whose account the money came from." "How long will it take?" I asked. "A few weeks, maybe a month," he said. "These things take time. You have to be patient." Patience? I was not feeling very patient. I wanted to confront Chloe right now. I wanted to scream at her. But I knew Mark and Mr. Grant were right. I had to wait. I had to build my case. The fee for the investigator was high. It would take a significant chunk of our savings. But we did not hesitate. It was worth it. It was the price of justice. While we waited for the investigator to do his work, I had to continue living my life. I had to pretend that everything was normal. That meant I had to see my family. I had to see Chloe. The following Sunday, we went back to my parents' house for dinner. I was dreading it. I felt sick to my stomach just thinking about facing her. When we walked in, Chloe was there lounging on the couch. She was wearing a loose-fitting top, but I could see a small, definite bump. Was it real? Or was it the beginning of her charade? I did not know. She smiled at me, a sweet, sympathetic smile. "Sarah," she said, her voice soft. "How are you feeling?" I had to force myself to breathe. I had to remember the plan. Do not confront. Observe. I am fine, I said, my voice neutral. I was so worried about you, she said, loud enough for our mother to hear from the kitchen. I hope I did not upset you the other day. I just want what is best for you. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I could feel Mark tense up beside me. I know, I said, forcing a small, tight smile. Thank you for your concern. I spent the rest of the evening watching her. I watched her talk about her pregnancy. She had all the details down. The cravings, the fatigue, the little kicks she was starting to feel. It was a flawless performance. I also watched Ben. Maya was right. He looked nervous. He kept glancing at me when he thought I was not looking. He jumped every time the phone rang. He was not a good actor. He was a man drowning in a lie that was too big for him. During dinner, my grandmother brought up the letter again. Sarah, dear, she said, her voice kind. I hope you are not letting that news get you down. There are so many options these days. Adoption, surrogacy. I looked at Chloe. She was watching me, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. She was enjoying this. She was enjoying my public humiliation. I am looking into all my options, I said, meeting her gaze. I let a little bit of steel into my voice. I am going to get a second opinion, of course, just to be sure. Chloe's smile wavered for a fraction of a second. She did not expect that. She expected me to crumble. She expected me to accept her verdict. Of course, she said quickly. That is a smart thing to do. But I had planted a seed of doubt. I had shown her that I was not going to be a passive victim in her twisted drama. The next few weeks were a strange kind of torture. I went about my daily life, working, seeing friends, but the secret was always there, simmering beneath the surface. I avoided Chloe as much as I could. I made excuses not to go to family dinners. I told my mother I was busy with a big project at work. Meanwhile, Mr. Grant was working. He gave us weekly updates. He had successfully obtained the security footage from the clinic. He had also started tracing the payment. One afternoon, about a month after I hired him, he called me. I have something, he said. I think you and your husband should come down to my office. My heart started pounding. Is it proof? I asked. It is definitive, he said. Mark and I drove to his office immediately. We sat in the 2 chairs facing his desk. He turned his computer monitor toward us. This is the security footage from the clinic waiting room, he said. From the date of the appointment. He pressed play. I saw the waiting room. It was quiet and tastefully decorated. A few women were sitting in chairs, reading magazines. Then the door opened. A woman walked in. She was wearing a scarf and big sunglasses, but it was unmistakably Chloe. I gasped. Seeing it with my own eyes so clearly was a shock. It was one thing to know it. It was another to see it. She walked to the reception desk. She spoke to the receptionist. She filled out paperwork. She sat down and waited. Then a nurse called my name. Sarah Thompson? And my sister Chloe stood up and followed her. There it is, Mark said, his voice a low growl. The bitch. There is more, Mr. Grant said. He closed the video file and opened another one. It was a bank statement. We traced the payment. It was a wire transfer for $5,000. It came from this account. He highlighted the name on the account. It was not Chloe's. It was not Ben's. It was Eleanor Abernathy, my grandmother. So I was right. Chloe had not only lied to me, she had lied to our grandmother to fund her scheme. She had manipulated an old woman into paying for her own granddaughter's character assassination. What did she tell her the money was for? I wondered aloud. We can find out, Mr. Grant said. But for now, you have what you wanted. You have undeniable proof that your sister impersonated you at that clinic. I looked at the screen, the image of Chloe in her sunglasses, pretending to be me. The bank statement with my grandmother's name on it. This was the ammunition I needed. What do you want to do with this information? Mr. Grant asked. I looked at Mark. He looked at me. We did not even need to speak. We both knew what the next step was. I want to confront her, I said. But not yet. Not until I have everything. There is still something that does not feel right. What do you mean? Mark asked. Her pregnancy? I said. Ever since this started, I have had a bad feeling about it. It all seemed too perfect. Too convenient. The timing of it all. You think she is faking it? Mark asked, his voice full of disbelief. I do not know, I said. But if she is willing to do all of this, to fake my infertility, what else is she willing to fake? Mr. Grant leaned forward, his interest piqued. If you want me to look into it, I can, he said. It will require more surveillance. It will cost more. Do it, I said without hesitation. I want to know everything. I want every single one of her lies exposed. I left the investigator's office feeling a strange mix of emotions. I was furious. I was hurt. But I also felt powerful. I was no longer the victim. I was the one holding the cards. Chloe thought she had won. She had no idea that the game was far from over. And I was about to change all the rules. The investigation into Chloe's pregnancy began. Mr. Grant assigned a surveillance team to watch her. They followed her everywhere. To the grocery store, to her yoga class, to her part-time job at the boutique. They took pictures. They documented her every move. Every few days, Mr. Grant would send me a report. At first, it was all very normal. Chloe went about her life, looking for all the world like a happy, expectant mother. Her baby bump was growing. She posted pictures on social media, cradling her stomach. She got hundreds of likes and comments. You're glowing. So beautiful. Can't wait to meet the little one. Each post felt like a personal insult. She was building her perfect life on a foundation of lies, and everyone was celebrating her for it. I continued to keep my distance from my family. I knew I could not trust myself to be around Chloe. I was afraid I would explode. I told my mother that my work project was getting more intense. She was disappointed. She said I was missing out on all the excitement of Chloe's pregnancy. She needs your support, Sarah, she told me on the phone. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. One evening, about 2 weeks into the new phase of the investigation, Mr. Grant called me. His voice was different. It was urgent. We found something, he said. Something you need to see. Mark and I went to his office the next morning. He did not waste any time. He showed us a series of photographs. They were taken from a distance, a little grainy, but the subject was clear. It was Chloe. She was meeting with another woman in a quiet corner of a park. The other woman was visibly pregnant. Very pregnant. Much more pregnant than Chloe was supposed to be. Who is that? I asked, my heart starting to pound again. Her name is Jessica, Mr. Grant said. We ran her name. She is a client of a well-known surrogacy agency. Surrogacy. The word hit me like a physical blow. But Chloe is pregnant, I said, even though the word sounded hollow. Is she? Mr. Grant asked. He showed me another set of photos. These were of Chloe at her home. She was in her backyard, gardening. She was wearing old shorts and a t-shirt, and her stomach was completely flat. There was no baby bump, not even a small one. I stared at the picture. I could not speak. My mind was trying to process the information. The bump was fake. She was wearing a prosthetic. We have footage of her putting it on in the morning and taking it off at night, Mr. Grant said quietly. She keeps it in a box in her closet. It was all a lie. The pregnancy, the glowing mother-to-be. The whole thing was a performance. A lie so audacious, so complete, that it was almost brilliant. So the other woman, Jessica, I started, is her surrogate, Mr. Grant finished. We checked the agency's records. We have a copy of the contract. It is signed by Chloe and Ben. They are paying Jessica to carry a baby for them. a baby that is due in about 2 months. The pieces all clicked into place. The fake pregnancy, the fake infertility diagnosis for me. It was all part of one monstrous plan. She was faking her pregnancy so she could pass the surrogate's baby off as her own. And she had investigated my fertility to make sure I would not get pregnant first and ruin her timeline. She needed to be the first. She needed to secure the trust fund. This is evil, Mark whispered. He looked sick. I felt a cold, calm certainty settle over me. The shock was gone. The hurt was still there, but it was overshadowed by a burning, righteous anger. This was not just a sisterly rivalry anymore. This was a crime. A calculated, cruel, and deeply pathological deception. There is one more thing, Mr. Grant said. He slid a document across the desk. It was a copy of the surrogacy contract. He pointed to a specific clause. It was about the genetic material used. The egg donor was listed as anonymous. The sperm donor was listed as Ben. So it is Ben's biological child, I said. Yes, Mr. Grant said. But we did some more digging into the anonymous egg donor. The agency is very strict about confidentiality, but my sources are very good. He paused, looking at me. Sarah, he said gently. The egg donor was not anonymous. Chloe purchased eggs from a donor bank. She specifically requested a donor with a certain profile, a donor who looked like you. I felt the air leave my lungs. I could not breathe. It was the cruelest cut of all. She was not just stealing my chance at the inheritance. She was stealing my identity. She was building a baby that would look like it could have been mine. A baby that would replace the one she tried to convince me I could never have. It was a final, twisted act of erasure. I did not cry. I was beyond tears. I was in a place of cold, clear rage. I have everything I need, I said, my voice flat and hard. Thank you, Mr. Grant. You have done an excellent job. We paid him the final installment of his fee. We took the thick folder of evidence, the photos, the bank statements, the security footage on a USB drive, the copy of the surrogacy contract. It was a complete and total record of my sister's depravity. On the drive home, I was silent. Mark kept glancing at me, worried. What are you thinking? He finally asked. I am thinking about our grandmother's 80th birthday party, I said. He looked confused. That is in 3 weeks. I know, I said. The whole family will be there. Everyone she knows, all of her friends. It will be a big celebration. He started to understand. A slow smile spread across his face. Oh, he said. Oh, that is perfect. She loves a big audience, I said, a bitter smile on my own face. Let's give her one. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal. I had to act like the dutiful, supportive sister. I even went with Chloe to look at baby furniture. It was a surreal experience. I watched her rub her fake belly and talk about nursery colors. I had to bite my tongue to keep from screaming. She was so confident, so smug. She had no idea what was coming. She thought she had won. She thought I was beaten. The day of my grandmother's party arrived. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon. The party was being held at a fancy country club. The room was filled with flowers and balloons. A string quartet was playing in the corner. There were at least 100 people there. All of Eleanor's oldest and dearest friends, the pillars of her social circle. Chloe and Ben arrived, and a hush fell over the room. Chloe was wearing a stunning blue dress that showed off her baby bump perfectly. She looked radiant. She was the star of the show. Everyone crowded around her, touching her stomach, congratulating her. I watched from across the room, a glass of water in my hand. Mark stood beside me, his hand on the small of my back. Are you ready? He asked. I am ready, I said. We waited for the perfect moment. It came after the lunch when my father stood up to make a toast. I would like to propose a toast, he said. his voice thick with emotion. To my mother, Eleanor, a wonderful woman, a loving mother, and soon a great-grandmother. Everyone cheered and raised their glasses. And to my daughter, Chloe, he continued, who is about to give my mother the greatest gift of all. Chloe beamed. She stood up, holding Ben's hand. She put her other hand on her belly. The spotlight was on her. This was it, my moment. I stepped forward. I would like to say something too, I said. My voice was clear and steady. It carried across the silent room. Everyone turned to look at me. My father looked annoyed at the interruption. Chloe looked surprised. I also want to toast my sister, I said, walking slowly toward the center of the room. I made sure I was standing where everyone could see me. Chloe, I said, looking directly at her. You have always been so concerned about my health, about my future. You even took it upon yourself to investigate my fertility. A nervous murmur went through the family members who knew about the letter. Chloe's smile tightened. Sarah, this is not the time or the place, my mother whispered urgently from her table. Oh, I think it is the perfect time and place, I said, my voice getting louder. Because I have some news of my own. I got a second opinion. It turns out my fertility is perfectly normal. There's absolutely nothing wrong with me. Chloe's face went white. Ben looked like he was going to be sick. But that is not the most interesting thing I discovered, I continued, my voice dripping with ice. I discovered that my sister Chloe is a liar and a thief. Gasps echoed around the room. My father started to walk toward me, his face red with anger. That is enough, Sarah. No, it is not enough, I said, holding up my hand. You have all been celebrating Chloe's wonderful pregnancy. You have all been touching her belly. But I have a question for you, Chloe. How is the baby today? Is it kicking? Chloe just stared at me, frozen. Because I find it strange, I said, pulling a photo out of my purse. It was the photo of her in her backyard with a flat stomach. I held it up for everyone to see. That just last week you did not seem to have a baby bump at all. The room erupted in whispers. I held up another photo. The one of her meeting Jessica, the surrogate, in the park. And I find it even stranger that you have been meeting with this woman, I said. Her name is Jessica. She is a surrogate, and she is the one who is actually pregnant. Chloe let out a small, strangled sob. Ben tried to pull her away, but she was like a statue. You have been lying to all of us, I said, my voice ringing with power and with pain. You are not pregnant. You have been wearing a fake stomach. You hired a surrogate to have a baby for you, a baby you were going to pass off as your own. I looked at my grandmother. Her face was a mask of horror and disbelief. And why? I said, my voice dropping. For money. For a trust fund. You lied to our grandmother, you took her money to pay for a scheme to defraud her. And you tried to destroy my life. My marriage and my hope of ever having a family, just so you could be first. Just so you could win. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. Then, I delivered the final blow. The worst part, I said, my voice breaking with real emotion now. The cruelest part of all is that when you hired that surrogate, when you bought the donor eggs to create that baby, you chose a donor who looked just like me. That was it. The final, horrifying detail that broke through everyone's disbelief. My grandmother let out a cry of anguish. My mother started to sob. Chloe finally broke. She collapsed into a chair, her hands covering her face. Her whole body was shaking with gut-wrenching sobs. The perfect golden child was shattered. Ben stood there helpless. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. But there was no mercy in my heart. Not for him. Not for her. I turned and walked back to my table. I picked up my purse. Mark was already standing, waiting for me. We walked out of the room together. We did not look back. We did not need to. I had said everything I needed to say. I had taken back my story. And I had left my sister to drown in the truth. The aftermath of the party was like a bomb had gone off in my family. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for Chloe and Ben. My grandmother, a woman of formidable will and pride, acted swiftly. She was not just hurt, she was enraged. The public humiliation in front of her oldest friends was an unforgivable offense. The day after the party, she called a family meeting. Mark and I were asked to attend. Chloe and Ben were summoned. My parents were there, looking pale and shattered. We all sat in Eleanor's formal living room, the same room where she had toasted Chloe's pregnancy just weeks before. The silence was heavy and suffocating. Chloe was a ghost of her former self. Her face was puffy from crying. She wore no makeup. Her usual vibrant energy was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed shame. Ben sat beside her, looking defeated. He could not even look anyone in the eye. Eleanor began to speak. Her voice was not frail or old. It was as hard and sharp as a diamond. "I have been a fool," she began, her gaze fixed on Chloe. "I have been blinded by my love for you, and you have taken advantage of that. You have lied to me. You have stolen from me. But worst of all, you have tried to destroy your own sister for nothing more than greed." Chloe started to cry again, a low, pitiful sound. "Grandma, I am so sorry," she whispered. "Sorry is not a word that can fix this," Eleanor snapped back. "You did not just tell a lie, Chloe. You constructed a monstrous deception. You committed fraud. You impersonated your sister. You manipulated me into funding your disgusting scheme. Do you have any idea of the damage you have done?" She did not wait for an answer. "I have spoken to my lawyers this morning," she continued, her voice cold. "I am disowning you. You and your husband. You will be written out of my will. You will receive nothing from me. Not a penny. The trust fund for the first great-grandchild has been dissolved. I will be setting up new, equal trusts for all my future descendants. All of them, except for any child that comes from you." The finality of her words was brutal. Chloe let out a strangled gasp. Ben's head shot up. His face a picture of pure panic. Their entire future, the one they had schemed and lied for, had just evaporated. "Furthermore," Eleanor said, her eyes like chips of ice, "I want the money back. The $5,000 you took from me under false pretenses. I expect it returned in full within 30 days. If it is not, I will press charges for fraud." My father finally spoke, his voice weak. "Mother, please. She is still your granddaughter." "She stopped being my granddaughter when she decided to treat this family like a game she had to win at any cost," Eleanor said, her voice unwavering. "My decision is final." She then turned to my parents. "And you two," she said, her voice softening slightly but still firm. "You enabled this. You have always enabled her. You have always put Chloe on a pedestal and left Sarah in her shadow. You saw the rivalry and you did nothing to stop it. You need to look long and hard at the role you played in creating this monster." My mother broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. My father just sat there, his face ashen. For the first time, they were being forced to confront the consequences of their lifelong favoritism. Eleanor stood up. "This meeting is over," she said. "Chloe, Ben, get out of my house. I do not want to see either of you ever again." They stumbled out of the room, defeated and broken. As they left, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. My revenge was complete. But it had come at the cost of shattering my family. After they were gone, Eleanor turned to me and Mark. Her expression softened. "Sarah," she said, her voice filled with regret, "I am so sorry. I am sorry for what she did to you. And I am sorry that I did not see it. I should have seen it." "It is not your fault, Grandma," I said. "It is," she insisted. "But I promise you this. From now on, things will be different." And they were. In the weeks and months that followed, the dynamics of our family shifted completely. My parents, humbled and ashamed, started to make a real effort with me. They called me more often. They asked about my life, my work, my feelings. It was awkward at first, but it was a start. They were finally seeing me as an individual, not just as Chloe's younger sister. Chloe and Ben became social outcasts. The story of what had happened at the party spread like wildfire through our community. They were publicly shamed. Ben lost his teaching job due to the scandal. Chloe's friends abandoned her. They had to sell their house and move to a different town to escape the disgrace. I heard through the grapevine that the surrogate, Jessica, had given birth to a baby boy. Chloe and Ben were raising him, but under a cloud of shame and financial ruin. They had gotten their baby, but they had lost everything else. Mark and I focused on our own lives. With the pressure and the poison of Chloe's lies gone, we felt a new sense of freedom. We started trying for a family again, but this time it was for us, not for anyone else. A few months later, I found out I was pregnant. It was a quiet, joyful moment. There was no big announcement, no dramatic party. Just me and Mark holding each other in our small apartment, filled with a sense of hope and peace that we had not felt in a long time. I told my parents and my grandmother. They were overjoyed, but in a much more gentle, genuine way than they had been with Chloe. My mother cried, but this time her tears felt real. My pregnancy was easy and happy. I felt healthy and strong. I thought about Chloe sometimes. I wondered if she ever felt remorse for what she had done. I wondered if she ever looked at the son she was raising and felt a pang of guilt for the way he was brought into the world. But I did not dwell on it. Her story was over for me. When my daughter was born, it was the happiest day of my life. She was perfect. She had Mark's eyes and my smile. We named her Lily. My grandmother came to the hospital to see her. She held Lily in her arms and her eyes filled with tears. "She is beautiful, Sarah," she whispered. "She is a true gift." There was no talk of trust funds or legacies. There was just the quiet, profound love of a family that had been broken and was slowly starting to heal. One day, about a year after Lily was born, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Chloe. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a long, rambling letter. It was full of excuses and self-pity. She blamed our parents. She blamed our grandmother. She blamed me for exposing her. But buried in all the justifications, there were a few small words of apology. "I am sorry for the pain I caused you," she wrote. "I was wrong." It was not the heartfelt, soul-bearing apology I once might have craved. It was weak and insufficient. But it was something. I read the letter and then I put it away in a drawer. I did not need her apology to move on. I had already moved on. My life was full. I had a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, a family that was finally learning to love me for who I was. Chloe had tried to take everything from me. She had tried to write my story for me, a story of barrenness and failure. But I had refused to let her. I had taken the pen back into my own hands. I looked at my daughter, playing on the floor with her blocks. She was the happy ending I had never known I was fighting for. Chloe wanted to know if I could have a child. Now, she would spend the rest of her life knowing the answer. She would have to live with the knowledge that while she was busy building a life based on lies, I was busy building a real one, based on truth and love. And that was the most satisfying victory of all.